Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How
Yes.
lovely to see you. All looking so gorgeous.
Next Wednesday is my birthday.
I know.
Yes.
And
I'm going backwards, by the way. I'll be
That's
12.
yes, I know you're
Benjamin
much younger
Button.
than your children.
Are you having a party?
I don't think so. My girls always pull something out of the bag, so I'm not allowed to ever arrange anything on my birthday. So I have no idea.
Party bags.
Oh, yes. Natalie wants party bags. When's your birthday,
We're
Caddy?
party bags. We can be your party bags.
When is it, Caddy? I don't know when
you've got
Caddy's
a
birthday.
June birthday. My birthday's January the 14th, which is just no one's got any money. It's the middle of winter. It's really
Well, Natalie's even worse, isn't it? When's your birthday?
Boxing Day.
Boxing Day.
Boxing Day.
oh my goodness. So you
Yeah.
enjoy
Overs.
Are
So
you both
does everyone
Capricorns?
buy you Christmas and birthday presents together?
When I was a little girl, I used to get, people would say, I've given you one present for both. Well, when you're 7 or 8 or 9, that's really difficult because you don't know which one to open, or whether, do I save it? In which case I won't open anything on Christmas Day. It's kind of, yeah. I mean, even if it's a tiny token, it's not fair. But
No.
as I've got older, I get more and more spoiled. I think I've told this story too many times, and now I get so many presents. It's great. And I would say, oh, you shouldn't have.
But you see, I'm born in June, you see, which is halfway through the year, which is great for me. So you've got the Christmas, and then you've got June. And Dee is in April, aren't you, Dee?
April.
Yes,
Yes.
nice too.
Aries.
Yeah.
But you're both Capricorns then, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes.
We've got 2 little goats with us, Dee.
What, darling?
I used to think it was the
2
most
little
boring
goats.
side in the
Oh,
zodiac.
I love Capricorns. No wonder we
thought
get
it
on
was
so
boring.
well.
I want to be a
I think they're
Scorpio.
so lovely.
Why
But
do you
these-
want to be a Scorpio?
They have a bit of sting in their tail. They're a bit more, I don't know, exciting. Capricorn's
I'm-
a bit more
No,
predictable.
I quite like. No, I've got used to my goat. Kind of. Apparently, a goat's supposed to go up the side of the mountain. It gets there eventually, but it's
yeah.
A bit.
a munch
That
on
is
the way.
true.
I think you look like a goat a bit, Natalie.
I do, don't I?
Well, you haven't got a goatee though, have you?
I hope I don't.
Anyway, actually, having said that, we must get Susie Quattro back on because she's
We
brilliant
must.
on star signs.
Yeah.
She really is. And I've missed her.
I'll give her a bell.
I've missed her. Anyway, let's carry on with our wonderful guest, our Angie Greaves.
You're looking lovely, darling. Gorgeous. Love that colour on you.
Radiant.
Thank you. I was out walking early this morning, so I literally was shower, eyebrows on, lipstick on, and anyway. How is everybody in the nest today?
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are.
Lovely.
You know, I was thinking, Angie Steads, I was getting, me and Alexa were talking this morning, as you do. Actually, was it you, Natalie? Somebody told me about Alexa farting. That's something.
Oh.
Yes, we
She
did
does.
try
She
that.
farts a lot if you ask her to, and I only just found that out. But anyway, something completely different. I suddenly thought, oh God, I just want to listen to something to make me happy. And then I thought, when was the last time, or when was the best time of my life, if you like? When was it? And I thought, what year was it? And then I thought, yeah, the summer of that year. And I just said, Alexa, play music from the summer of that year. And I was transformed and it was like, I went backwards in time. It was like I took another journey. It's a wonderful thing to do, isn't it?
But that's what music does, and music, it transports you. So I can remember do you remember the album by Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb, Guilty?
Yes, I was listening to it on Smooth last night.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That album for me always reminds me of my college days. I used to do a part-time job in a boutique. Do you remember Snob? Do you remember?
Yes.
I used to work in Snob in Brent Cross, and when that album came out, I can just remember all of us, we used to be singing Shadows Falling, baby. And we would just all sing that album. Another song that makes me, it really transports me, is Anita Baker's Rapture, with
Oh, yeah.
Sweet Love, and you know,
Yes.
for me, because it was at a time when I was out raving a lot, but I remembered her coming to the UK, and most artists, we were getting to that stage where to be scantily clad whilst performing was the way to do it. And she just came out in this dress, kind of just below the knee, and the skirt would just swish, and she was covered up, and it made you concentrate on her voice and not what she was wearing, and oh God, look at her boobs and look at it. There was none of that. And I just really love that album. And I don't want to focus on the pandemic, but I will just say this: music sounded different during lockdown. And I always say the track You Might Need Somebody by Randy Crawford sounded completely different in lockdown than it has ever sounded before. So there is something about music moving you and transporting you and healing as well.
Do you know that
It's
they did an experiment? I think you must have seen it on TV, where they bought a load of celebrities and they took them back to the 70s.
Yeah.
In the house, they put them in the 70s clothes, and they played 70s music and 70s television programs. And
Yeah,
some of them,
yeah.
did you see it?
I remember
didn't- It was amazing, because some of these older actors, they couldn't bend down. They had terrible arthritis. 2 weeks in that house, playing that music all the time, watching 70s programs, they
There
were
you go.
transformed. They were younger.
There is a new artist that I kind of stumbled across on YouTube ages ago, and she was only about 22 or something. I think she's about 24 now. She's called, now I think you pronounce it Laufey, and it's Laufey. She's from Iceland or somewhere.
Ooh.
Listen to her music. It's the most wonderful voice. Her voice sounds much more mature than a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
But her songs, her melody, she's brilliant. And I've just, my son lives in New York, and he said, oh, she's coming to New York, I should go and see her because she's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Total
Go
sellout.
see her. Go see
She's
her.
just, well, can't get a ticket.
But Caddy, your house must be just a musical, daily journey. I mean, how gorgeous, not just to listen to music, but to create music as well.
It was interesting when you were talking about lockdown, because it was crazily noisy with music, but everyone thinks it's kind of just like a beautiful concert every day. It isn't actually. It's kind of different noises coming out of different rooms at the same time. But when we play music, or when they're playing and performing, yes, it's lovely. And it's
Do you ever find sometimes you say to the kids, or they just decide, oh, let's just have like a 10-minute jam session, and an hour later, because you get caught up in this, I don't know what it is, it's just like a musical wave, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that can go on for 2 hours, 3 hours. And that's the most joyful, because everything that they've been doing separately all comes together, and then something new happens. And that's not necessarily just classical, it can be anything.
Love
so
it.
that's the most joyful times, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
Love
Do you know,
I mean-
I always meditate to music, and it's very, very weird, because for many years I've been meditating, probably for 20 or even 30 years, to Native American music with flute
Oh, wow.
sounding. And when I went back to the States, because I was born in the States, I was told that I've got Native American blood, Choctaw. And I really have connected with that already. I'd connected with that music. And I'm at the moment rehearsing my new show, and we're incorporating some of the sounds from the tribal sounds within that. Yeah. And it's such a healing thing, as music always is. Well, they're saying that, music can actually cure a lot of even very serious illnesses.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, as you said, because it makes you happy, and happiness is a healing, thing. And, I just think music is so important in people's lives.
It's the hormone. What is it? The happy hormone.
Dopamine, is it dopamine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
it gives off. And
It's like,
Serotonin?
serotonin, that's the one.
yes,
So,
yes.
If you're in a bad mood for whatever reason, and you just can't snap out of it. You know, somebody talks to you, a mate calls you, you just can't snap out of it. A song that will transport you back to not even necessarily a good memory, but it just brings up something, and it just raises your energy, it raises your spirits. And what I love, just something that you said, Caddy, it's interesting that you said, you know, it's not just classical music in your house. All kinds of music, I believe, are healing. So when people say to me, Angie, what's your favorite music genre? I can't answer. I can tell you that I was brought up on gospel. So that's the one that's probably deepest in my emotions. Love my reggae, love my soul. Obviously, when I go back to Barbados, I love my soca. But I find classical music so calming. And not being knowledgeable about classical music, it just goes over me. It just, do you know what I mean? And I just love it. And I was in Amsterdam a few weeks ago, and I met a quartet, a musical quartet, who actually play with the Macedonian Philharmonic Orchestra. But these four guys, they tour themselves. They call themselves the Alma Quartet.
Oh,
and
yes.
when do you know Alma?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So when I did this interview with Daniel, who plays the violin, he then played me a piece by Beethoven over a bossa nova beat.
Oh, wow.
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 And I'm all for that because it makes it more accessible. And also when you mix two different genres, like I've heard Bach played with classical, with African music and the drums and the singing, and it's just beautiful because it
Lovely.
opens up more possibilities, and it's emotional as you could never imagine. So I'm all for that. I think it's wonderful.
It was amazing. It was because I'm getting down to this beat. And I'm thinking, yeah, and I'm going, I recognise that. He says, yes. Oh, I'm not supposed to dance to classical music like that. But that's the joy. And it's more than magic. It's the joy. It's an energy. I can't explain it. It's almost like a spiritual thing when those two musical genres meet. It's gorgeous. Love it.
A Cuban beat. A few years ago, I went to Cuba, and music is played everywhere. It's just everywhere. So you've got this sort of, it's just the most wonderful feeling. And you're looking at a lot of poverty and everything in the middle of Havana, but there's something about the soul of the place because the music.
You
everywhere.
forget the poverty, don't you? You forget the oh, it's wonderful. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. We are so lucky. I mean, I go back. It's funny. I had a really good time when I was in the States when I lived there in 1985.
Yeah.
And there was a song that I can't find, and I'm sure it was some. I keep going back and trying to find it because I can't even remember what it was. I think it was like a Hill Street Blues sort of. It was a sort of instrumental sort of thing.
Okay.
But every time I hear anything from that time, and that was the time that Band-Aid, all of that lot, that was them. And I just literally, 1985 was a very interesting year. It was sort of like transformative, you know. It was and a year of so many decisions for me. And then I think that it's just, you know, BC, as I always say, before Kira, before children.
What about when you meet an artist who's really touched your life? I've interviewed lots of people, but there are certain people that I've met, and I'm glad I've met them. I'm not glad I've met everybody that I've met. I still wish sometimes you know what I mean?
Yes.
Right, good. But what about when there's a song and through 6 degrees of separation, you meet that artist? That's a beautiful feeling as well, isn't it?
Who you just remember most as being the most exciting person you've ever interviewed or met, Angie?
Okay, I can give you different reasons why I've been excited to meet different people, but I'll tell you why I asked this question about meeting somebody. Do you remember a TV show called Taxi?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I do.
Do you remember the beginning of that TV show was from a taxi along Brooklyn Bridge?
Yeah.
And the music, it was a flute. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. That was a song that was composed by the musician Bob James. And it's called Angela.
Oh.
Of course it is.
And I had no idea. All those years of watching Taxi, I get an opportunity to interview Bob James. And that nugget comes up. And that's always been memorable for me.
No. When I think of my name, Deborah, Mark Bolan,
Deborah.
Sorry. No. What about D? Is there a D one or a caddy
No,
one?
there's no
Or a
D one.
Natalie, is
Yes,
there a song about
yes,
you?
yes. My
No,
mother
Dee.
bought me the EP of Bob Monkhouse singing "I Remember Natalie."
Okay.
I love
All
that.
right.
I
You
was
know,
excited at the time.
I have to tell you that I was always brought up with music because my grandparents were from South London. So we used to always have a sing-song around the piano. And they would insist that I got up, much to my, dismay, most of the time, I actually performed. So it's like I had to be there and but actually all the influences around then, they had fabulous finals, which really have rocked my boat now because, things like Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday and
Wow.
Nat King Cole,
Yeah.
all of those fabulous songs. And, I'm singing some of them now actually, but they make you feel so good and they really mean something,
Yeah.
I mean, I was brought up in the music business, with my mother and my stepfather from when I was 11 years old. And I met some of the biggest stars. And, used to go to the recordings and you don't even think about it, do you, at the time? When I look back on it, I mean, I found the other day, I found a picture of me with Barry White.
Woo!
I mean, how
Boy.
very strange. I remember thinking how enormous he was. I'd never seen such a
Yeah.
big person in all my life. But then you think of all the people that you've met, the fantastic experiences of your life, just being in the same room as them. I mean, my parents used to represent Jackie Trent and Tony Hatch, and you think what Tony's done with all the theme songs and all the big hits that he had, and the bands that I met, and it's just like, wow, it's now it seems like a dream really, because nobody has. To have that chance to be just there.
But
Were you very popular at school, Debbie? Did everybody want to be your best friend? Because I would wanted to be your best
I
friend.
I bet. Well,
Yeah.
Shirley Bassey used to come for tea. I've told this story many times on this show, but I don't know if you know Angie, but Shirley Bassey used to come for tea at our house.
Wow.
And when I was a kid, and I was always fascinated by her because you know how she used to do that, or how she does that. And she did that and she had a hole in her jumper. And I've always remembered.
Well, I remember sitting with Paul and Linda McCartney. I'm so sorry to drop names. And
Drop the names.
just sitting there having a dinner with them at Roger Glover's house. I mean, this sounds bizarre. And all I could do was look at the fact that her skirt was held together with a safety pin.
Oh.
And I thought, Linda McCartney, do you know, a safety pin? It just seemed so
They're
weird.
human. She's human. She's human.
Yeah.
And if something happened just before she was about to go out the door, put a safety pin on. I've got to go, otherwise I'm going to be late.
Yeah. And it's the
Well,
only memory I have of that night is the safety pin. I mean, that's the most bizarre thing, isn't it?
That figures actually. And I mean, this is definitely not one-upmanship, but the chimney sweep I used to use in Chiswick used to also do their house. And he used to say to me, oh, she's so lazy. She comes down in old trousers and opens the door. Oh, geez, they're all dirty. And I thought, wow, yes, that's our Linda.
When you see, I mean, these massive stars. I mean, my parents my mother and stepfather used to look after Jimi Hendrix, and they used to look after all the people. But my favorite story, just to end on this one, is I was probably about 11 and a half, and I was at the office, and they had the Walker Brothers, the Rocket, big stars, Brotherhood of Man, all the sort of like poppy sort of people of those days. And there was a band that came down to the office, and then they came up again, and they got into this van, that was brightly coloured van, And I said, oh, hello. And they said, hello. And I said, oh, I'm Mary's daughter. And they said, oh, lovely to meet you and everything else. And I said, what, did they said they wouldn't take us on. And I said, oh, that's sad. I said, I love your band. I said, what's the name of your band? Just in case I have to remember. And they said, don't ever forget us. We're called Pink Floyd.
Oh,
Pink Floyd, can't beat that one. Can't
No.
beat that one.
you really can't. Well, just one more
Well, I
story.
could beat
Sorry.
that even with my own story, because I could tell you that when they were doing all the tours around with the Walker Brothers, and so the Walker Brothers were top of the bill, and then Jimi Hendrix and Cat Stevens was on there, but they had one of their new artists, because Tony Hatch was, at this time, he was working for Decca, and they'd given him someone to produce. And he said to my mum and stepfather, take him, there's something about him, I don't know what it was. Anyway, this guy came to our office and he's, look, I just want a tour, and my stepfather said, well, I'm not really keen on, your voice or whatever. He said, well, I'll do anything. I'll just be a compere. And they said, no, we'll look after you. But they couldn't really get him going. And it was David Bowie.
Ah,
And they represented him for a couple of years, thinking, oh, he's just nobody, nothing.
And there you have it.
And that's welcome to showbiz.
Yeah.
absolutely. That's what it's all about.
It is.
Oh,
Lovely
Angie,
to be in your company, ladies.
I
Natalie,
love you,
darling.
Caddy, Dee, Debbie. Take care.
Take care,
Kisses,
darling.
Ange.
Love you loads, darling.
Oh,
So, darling, I must tell you, that's incredible. All those stories about Debbie you met and everything, and it's very difficult to actually to do a one-upmanship on that. But I will tell you this story, which I will. But it's definitely not a one-upmanship. But I have to tell you, my husband, my ex-husband, he directed Pink Floyd's The Wall at Berlin when the wall came down, after the wall came down. And I remember him going for the job and him phoning me and saying, oh, I'm meeting Roger Waters this afternoon. I probably won't get the gig because, the competition is going to be rife. It really is. So I said to him, you will definitely get this because you're the only person, because it was a great big arena of a place they were putting the show on. And I said, you'll get it because you've been directing at the Olivier Theatre, which is the biggest in the world, really, or the country, whatever. Anyway, he phoned me later on and he phoned me, he said, I've got the gig. I've got it. He was offered it there and then on the spot. So he went out there. It was a complete there was nothing there, a terrain of nothingness. And he told me all the stories because he was in theatre, not rock and roll, but it was completely different. But he staged this amazing thing, which I flew out for, and everyone was there. Jerry Hall, Marianne Faithfull, Cyndi Lauper, but it was just magnificent, and it really showed me a lot about rock and roll because there was so much money at that time, and so everything was there, and we were driven in a limo with Albert Finney, and we left in an old sort of beaten van as it was being as the whole stage was being struck, the set, and it was just sensational. So that was lovely, but not one-upmanship, darling. Because
we don't do one-upmanship. It's a story. But I was just, as you mentioned that, I remembered when I was doing a Nimo tour, and we arrived at the airport, and we were picked up in Hong Kong, picked up by a lovely limousine. And then the next day we were going around in a tatty old bus. It just shows you go from one extreme to the other, don't you? That's our business.
Yes, exactly.
It really is. Well, girls, we shall see you very soon. Always a very interesting show with Ange. And take care, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.